Please help me welcome Tim Shurr.
All right, everybody, welcome to the show. Tim Shurr here. We have a fantastic guest, someone that most people are not able to even access. And I got lucky meeting Lynne at a neat networking event, and I had to have her on the show. So Lynne Driscoll is a powerhouse with IBM, right? She is a director. She's worked in many capacities as a leadership trainer, and she's put together incredible high-powered teams all around the world. Some of the things that she spends her time on now are acquisitions and mergers. She's an expert at strategic negotiations. She's just a real powerhouse, high up in the chain at IBM. And what really grabbed my attention was we were having a conversation, and she said, you know, if Google goes down or Apple goes down, you're not able to watch your YouTube videos on your iPhone. She says, but if IBM goes down, hospitals stop working, you know, planes start crashing. And I was like, wow, that was pretty amazing. And that's when I recognized that she had a real gift of gab. And so she was very insightful, and I started checking her out, and the posts that she's written, very amazing. So Lynne, welcome to the show, and thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Tim. I'm glad to be here this morning. Glad we could finally be in the same, area at the same time to meet via this Zoom conference.
Yes, I wanted to Linda come on a little earlier, and she's like, I'm sorry, I'm going to be in Manhattan. And then, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to be over here. And then I'm sorry, I'm over here. And then she's just like a globetrotter. And so thank God we have the power of Zoom. And so
Yes.
For this. So yeah, so thanks so much. So Lynne, tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are.
Well, it's been a little bit of a journey. After college, went out and got the first jobs. I was actually accepted to veterinary school when I was at Purdue University.
Mm-hmm.
I decided not to go, but I had a few computer classes under my belt, and I started selling computers off of a retail store floor. From there, I jumped to several different companies, ended up starting my own business multiple times during that period. At one point, we had about 40 employees and $2 million in sales.
Nice.
That business, yeah, and started another one that led me to a software company.
Okay.
And the software company I worked for was acquired by IBM in 1997.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so so you've been with IBM since 1997.
I have been, yes, in various different roles.
Wow. So you've really seen how things have changed in this new digital world that we live in.
Oh, goodness. Absolutely. There's been so many change so fast, so rapid. Even then the internet was just a babe in the woods, right? And companies were trying to figure out how to access it and what to do with it and what it meant. And in fact, back in the late 90s, I had a colleague. At that time, many people were jumping ship, Tim,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're all going out to the .com, right? It was the hot new thing, but we didn't really know what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a colleague I worked with for a few years, for a few months on a project, and he was jumping ship. He was going to .com out in California.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, Lynne, he goes, you're cool to work with. I bet you I can get you a job out there. Let me get out there. Let me get settled. And I thought, oh, yeah, whatever. I just got into IBM within the last year and a half.
Yeah.
And he called me a few months later, and he said, Lynne, I get you a job. There's a couple hundred employees out here. They're giving out stock options, all sorts of cool stuff. Why don't you come out there? And he said, I believe the gentleman's name was Jeff. And I said, Jeff, that sounds like an awesome idea, but I just got to IBM and I can't go work for some company named Google. And I had forgotten about that till about 7-8 years ago when I moved. Maybe
Wow.
my mind wanted to just, protect me from that. But if you can imagine, late 90s, stock options, couple hundred people.
Yeah.
But it was a company named Google.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it could have been a company named Enron. You know, you never know.
Right, exactly.
It's hindsight is 2020, so it's never quite fair, you know, to go look back and go, oh, because it could have been a number of those .com companies that would have crashed 10 years later.
You're absolutely right, you know, and if you just the name itself turned me off, but you know, we shouldn't judge a book by its cover, right?
Lesson number one.
Lesson number one.
Lesson number one. Yes. So, all right. So you've been working with IBM, and there's so many things that I want to talk to you about, or questions that I want to ask you. So, so let's start with your ability to build teams, right? Because I read one of your posts, and it was a beautiful picture. It looked like everybody had, was it the foot? Everybody had their foot in a circle, and it was all these different colored feet from all these different people from around the world, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful power team. And I thought that was great. So tell me a little bit about that experience.
Well, that particular experience was a global experience where we brought together a team of people from around IBM to work on an IBM community service project.
Mm-hmm.
IBM has this philanthropical history where we've always gone out, been part of our communities, been part of the world. We created a couple of years ago a IBM, what it's called, Community Service Corps. It's sort of like a mini version of the Peace Corps, but very mini version. That's generally out of country. You're located somewhere for a couple months. This particular project, though, Tim, was a subset of that.
Mm-hmm.
It was called IBM Health Corps. And in that particular use, we gathered people from around the world. We all gathered into Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
to work on a very key health problem that was part of our global crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And this in particular was cancer care in Africa.
Okay.
So we had people from Cameroon, one of the countries in Eastern Africa, from Singapore, from Mexico, from the United States, from South Africa. Oh, two lovely, lovely young women, future leaders of IBM from South Africa, all come together, and we lived together in like a big brother type environment. It was quite interesting, let me tell you. But the purpose was, in working with the American Cancer Society and the National Comprehensive Cancer Network, I want to make sure I get that right, two of the NGOs that help sponsor the project, was to create a tool to help oncologists in sub-Saharan Africa get answers about treatments for cancer more rapidly than what they could. So let me just give you an example of some statistics. As of last year in the country of Ethiopia, close to 100 million people, the total country had 3 oncologists in it. 3.
Oh.
I probably have 3 within 10 miles of my home right here.
Wow.
So if you can imagine the volume of work, the volume of data, they're brilliant, brilliant people. They just don't have all the resources that they need to face the challenges that they can in providing healthcare. So that being said, you wanted to talk about the high performance team. So we were interviewed as part of this project. We were all brought together. We lived together in a huge 11,000 square foot house, and that's for another podcast. And lived and breathed, putting together a tool using our cognitive technology, also known as AI, our branded cognitive technology called Watson, and created a tool that within 30 seconds, these oncologists could get down to what the latest treatments were for a particular cancer.
Okay. Yeah, that's amazing.
But that team coming together, what was really interesting was we did some team building at the beginning. And it turned out that we all reverted back to what our natural core was in doing this team building. Mm-hmm. There were people who were always quiet and on the sideline, but very observant. Mm-hmm. There were people who had a very clear direction of where we needed to go. Mm-hmm. And then there was the people who cracked the whip. Mm-hmm. Get it done now. Right. I'm guilty there. Okay. But as I walked through the house and I was looking for people, and remember it was an 11,000 square foot house, I would say, Simone, where are you, Simone? And I'd hear somebody in another room going, hey, Simone, the principal's looking for you. It was all in good humor, though. But I would drive people to what their talents were
Yes.
and keep them in alignment with that.
Yes.
Honor what their skills were. I didn't try to take the person who wanted to be quiet and force them to present in front of a group of people because they had different skills I needed to honor.
Right.
And I think that's a real key thing, is honoring who people are, not trying to force them into something that they're not.
Right.
So it was a fabulous experience. Within 3 weeks, we had a prototype. American Cancer Society was blown away. They're launching it November 6th in Rwanda.
Oh my gosh. How exciting. Congratulations. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was just, one item of team building was, taking care of what people do really well and let them do that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the hardest things, being a business owner, being a manager, being an executive, I think, is we try to make people too well-rounded. It's good to have a little bit of everything, but let them do what they're good at. Let them be that point guard, right?
Yeah.
Let them be that catcher. Don't try to turn them into an outfielder. So of doing that.
Yes. So let me recap, because you said a lot of really powerful things here, right? So first of all, when you're building a power team, you recognize that even if you try to manipulate somebody's personality to be something that you think it should be, they're going to revert back eventually to how they are programmed, how they are wired, their basic temperament. Okay. So what you're saying is find the right butts for the right seat. And then figure out what their strengths are and capitalize on them. Don't just try to build up their weaknesses. Figure out, it's like that great book, Strength Finders, right? Where they talk about catering to people's strengths and abilities. And so I did a whole program once for a company called Silent Leadership. And it was all about introverted people who make great leaders, and how extroverts think that they wouldn't be a good leader just because they're quiet and they're not out there and yelling and talking. Which I find it's the opposite, because introverted people are really looking at every angle before they speak. Extroverts like me are kind of like blah before, and then we'll work it out.
Yeah, you shoot then aim, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Ready, fire, aim. And so the other thing is that what I found with building strong, powerful teams is that you want people to be different, because that's where your power is. If you have a bunch of people that think just like you, then you miss out on the other perspectives. You don't add to the knowledge pool. So,
I heard our CEO, I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard at one time she walked into a room all filled with very homogeneous male audience. Okay. And she sat down listening to them. And again, I don't know if this is true or not, but it's a good story. She says, well, if you all are going to think alike and act alike, then I only need one of you. Right? They're pretty powerful.
Who is this?
Exactly. But, diversity, you hit on an extremely key point. And that's something that's very close and dear to my heart.
Yes.
The particular team I work on right now, Tim, is one of the most diverse teams in our broader division that I work in with intellectual property. We have representatives, and my vice president, who I report to, an incredible individual, Claudia, is a very well-known, very out LGBT executive worldwide, made Financial Times multiple times. We have other LGBT members on our team. We have African member, we've got Latino, we've got older people, we've got younger people, the millennials of the world. We have geographic, and let me tell you, even in a large company like I work for now, there's sometimes geographic discrimination going on. People would say, well, Lynn, how could you do what you live in Indianapolis, Indiana. And I'm like, I didn't know that made a difference. But the diversity, we have, all of our leaders right now on my team, just because the way it works out, we're all women. Okay.
I noticed that. That's awesome.
And we are the top producers in our organization. So diversity is really key. That's the way you get a power team.
You know,
You can't
that's
have
beautiful.
everybody be the same.
Yeah, that's right. IBM has been around forever, right? How long has IBM been around? Do you know?
I think we're at 105 right now.
105 years. So you would
Yeah.
think they would be really rooted in some of that old, way of thinking. But everything you describe makes them sound cutting edge.
No, it really do with what we do with our people and
Yeah.
how we embrace diversity, and
Yeah.
many stories around that. I have a close thing to my heart, accessibility, because I worked on that. That was helping people with disabilities access computer technology.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just to let you know, again, a subject for another day, but IBM hired its first disabled employee in 2014. And has always been a massive and tremendous supporter of people with disabilities, as well as diversity as well. And having a disability is just another flavor of having a different, diverse individual on your team.
Yeah. Yeah.
And along the way with accessibility, somewhere in my archives, I have a letter that was written to one of our chairmen of IBM from Helen Keller, thanking IBM for making the Braille typewriter.
Wow.
It is moving. It is moving. It's somewhere in my archives. I'll have to share it with you sometime when I find it.
That I would love to see that. That would be amazing. Yeah. Whew, that's pretty cool. So I got little shivers there. So, wow, I didn't know all this about IBM. I think that's really amazing. So their stock in my mind just went up. I mean, that's really cool. Yeah. So, and what because I work a lot with companies, and somewhere in the company, somebody will be resistant. Like I'll have two, like the chairman of the board and the president, or the CEO and the president, or vice president, or somebody will always be pushing back, right? Because their ego feels threatened, or they're afraid that, they're going to lose that. They might be acting like a dictator, but they feel like that's what made them successful, and they don't want to give it up. And so a lot of times, another friend of mine, Mick Cameron, that was a guest on the show, he was the president for a big company for 35 years here in India, or in America, and also in Germany. And he said what he would do is he would use examples of other successful people that were like him, or even higher up the food chain, and how they were doing it. And so now IBM sets the bar for how we need to be taking care of each other, right? And the need for acceptance. I think what builds the power teams in the most effective way is the term that's being tossed out there now, psychological safety, which is basically an understanding that we are going to respect each other, even if how we communicate, comes from all different angles. There's always going to be respect for the soul in front of you.
Absolutely. I can't believe you brought that up, because we just got through a very challenging but productive quarter here, closing out third quarter for 2017. And in reviewing with my team, we went around, and we have a small team meeting where there's no executives present except for myself. And I tell them every time, this is to be an open format. This is where you can, what we hope, and I use the word, safely share with me what you think are ways we can do things better, or what we did very well. And also celebrate each other's successes, because we really had to unite to get it done now for this quarter we just closed. Mm-hmm. And we go around the room, and amazing teamwork. And in fact, some new people who've come to my team said, I've never seen it this way at IBM, another team. We absolutely jump in for one another whenever we need to. It's like the baseball play where there's a line drive down to first base, and the first baseman has to run off to get it, but the pitcher knows to come over to first base, right, and cover. We have that type of dynamic because we, at some level, we make people do every part of everybody's job. Very key in building a very fungible type team. We want to help each other because we respect each other, and we make it a safe place to disagree with somebody, and not feel like you're going to get punished because you do. And doing this roundtable, Tim, with my team, and sometimes I have to prod them, saying, you did something very well, be proud of that. What did you learn? how can we help you be better on this team? We help everybody work together on that because we do a pretty brutal job for the timelines we're expected to execute. All of that being said, at the end, one of my team members, and this is very moving for me, okay? But one of my team members said, Lynn, we'd like to celebrate you. You are down in the trenches with us. You are, taking the pummeling with us. You are out there, you are up till 3 a.m, whatever it took. And they said, I quote, whenever you're in the room, we feel empowered and safe. And I want to tell you, I was almost moved to tears because I just think I'm doing my job. But however, that is how myself and my colleagues are able to run a high performance team and hit numbers out of the ballpark. Empowered and safe.
I'm writing it down. That is beautiful. So so this is interesting. It's kind of a magical combination because we have a mutual friend who was a retired Navy SEAL. And we were talking about this side of you that is so warm and so caring and so compassionate and just, so lovable. There's this other side of you, though, when you turn it on, when it comes to strategic negotiations, where people would think you were right out of Manhattan and you were tough as nails and maybe you even work for the mob. Right?
I've actually been referred to that from time to time, but yeah.
So people listening or watching this podcast right now would not think that about you because we started out talking about, helping people with cancer and the teamwork and all these nonprofits and all the things, all the beautiful goodwill work that you're doing, right? They might not see this other side of you. We're talking about people feeling safe and empowered. And I bring this up because I want people out there that are tough and strong to realize that you're as tough and strong as they are. And if you were in a room with them, they might be quivering right now. Okay. If they were on the other side of the table.
That's right.
And I want people to understand that you can be strong, you can be tough, you can have conviction and have it also come from a good place. So describe why people would think that you have that tough as nails approach.
I have very good boundaries. Okay. I think that's the first thing that I would say is I'm pretty easygoing until you give me a reason not to be easygoing. So, and you and I in our conversations, Tim, have talked about the fact that I'm an equestrian. And, I'm telling you, I'm going to have this TED Talk one time. The top 5 ways to negotiate was I've learned from my horse. Okay. But, a horse is a 1,000-pound to 1,200-pound animal that could pile drive you in a split second. They are prey animals. They're flight creatures. They have hooves that, can kick you at about 5,000 pounds per square inch. Okay. Not a fun thing, but yet we're able to control them and ride them. And part of that is boundaries. So when we talk about negotiations, I don't think you're ever negotiating unless you're in a position to walk away. Okay. And that's a basic, negotiation 101. I don't have my MBA, but I've got an experience of lifetime to have an MBA. Okay. So having good boundaries, being clear, being transparent. And something I learned years ago from the guy who sold the software company to IBM was do what you say you're going to do, when you say you're going to do it, for the price you say that you'll charge. Okay. And now that comes in different flavors and forms. But that being said is, I don't think there's any slickness or sliminess needs to go on in negotiation, but know your boundaries. Know what risks you're willing to absorb, because it's all about risk allocation. All negotiations is risk allocation. And hear what the other person's trying to do. So when I get stuck in a negotiation, I come back to the core thing of what business problem are you trying to solve? Because this is the business problem I'm trying to solve. let's reframe what you're trying to solve, because we seem to be apart on it. And when you have that business conversation, and keep the attorneys out of the room, by God, okay? But have that business conversation, Tim, then you start to have a meeting of minds. Not saying it's easy, not saying it's a cakewalk from there, but at least you have a basis that each of you are coming from. And what's dangerous in negotiations as well, I might have mentioned this to you in one of our conversations, is when people get very emotional and or say, well, it's a matter of principle. Ooh, they've just flipped to the emotional side and not logic. And you can't negotiate with emotions.
What do you do in that situation?
Boundaries, be clear, do what you say you're going to do, be transparent. I say, when you have to hold your ground, you have to hold your ground. And how do you hold your ground? Well, you're never negotiating unless you're in a position to walk away. And I have done that plenty of times.
So when someone goes emotional, what do you do?
You have to give them room to come down from that. Okay.
Okay.
How that, comes into fruition of how they come down. It's either just letting them talk more and more. It could be actually taking a break. It could be even something as simple as a humorous distraction. Okay. But you have to get them to come down from the emotion and get them to a place that you can go back to fact-based discussion.
I am taking notes.
I just do. I find this entertaining because I just do this, and you're asking me about how do I do it, and it seems so natural to me. It's good that I'm able to share this with some of your audience and your colleagues and your clients that you serve. So,
well, you did a beautiful job. That's why this podcast is called Psychological Secrets, right? Because sometimes they're even secret to us. We don't even know what we're doing. We're just doing it.
We don't know what we're doing.
You've created some steps, right? Know your boundaries, position to walk away, be clear in what you're communicating, be transparent, keep your word. It's all about risk allocation. What are you willing to absorb? What's your main goal, right? A meeting of the minds. You have to stay logical. You can't get emotional. Here's what you do if you start to get emotional in 3 steps. Mm-hmm. I'm going to turn this into an article and make you famous.
Okay. So. I don't even know. See, I don't even know that I do that because I've been doing it for so long. But that, and I'll tell you, it's fun to have my younger team members sit in a negotiation with me. I'm like, come on, be at the table. This is where the magic happens.
Yeah.
Although, can I give you a little side story? I've got a millennial. I've had millennials who work for me here over the while, and I had one recently who I part of it is you got to do the drudge work, right? You don't get to be at the table negotiating the types of deals that we do in any of our lives unless you've gone through some of the building steps. And I had sent this individual out on to go participate in a particular meeting that's kind of just, it's kind of drudgy. You just got to get through it, right? But it's part of the dues that you pay. And this individual was, I had to say, whining to me a little bit. And I said, you got to do it. Pay your dues, buddy. and I said, you want to be at the table, right? He goes, absolutely. But I want to be at the negotiation table. And I threw my head back laughing, going, you don't get there unless you take the steps, And by the way, I want you to have ears and eyes at this particular meeting so I know what I'm negotiating at the table. It's all built up. It's not, you just don't get in there, and be the CEO right away. You work your way up the ranks.
I mean,
so a lot of millennial stories I've got, but that's definitely another wonderful, creative, terrific, high energy people. And, a different view of the world.
Yeah, millennials have this kind of a general, and I'm generalizing here, but this idea that we can do it better. We can do it faster. We can be more efficient. I just need to be there. I don't have to do the old school approach of paying my dues and taking this long way around when I can just shortcut it like this, because they grow up with apps and they're growing up with the internet and they're growing up with a different mindset of now. Instant gratification, they want that even faster than instant. And so not all of them, but many have. I've heard that over and over again of, I want to jump to the front of the line. I want to put my order in with my app and then just show up and take what I want. and I can understand why it would be that way. And a lot of millennials are growing up in families where they feel like they have safety, like they're not just tossed out of the nest and then that's it. They can come right back home if they need to. And, so it's very different than when I grew up and I'm like, well, I'm on my own and I don't figure this out, I'm going to be under a bridge. So it's a different momentum.
It's again, honoring people for what they've experienced is, the millennials and their ability to go back home, returning back home, which I've got a great trick is how to keep your millennials from doing that because it worked for me. So, all of that, but the excitement and the joy that they bring to the job and the newness, it's so fun. If you don't get to manage some of the younger people, bring them on board to your team. You need that. You need that to refresh your own soul.
Yes.
And you ought to share that with a lot of the CEOs and COOs that you work with, Tim. They refresh your soul. It's a new way of looking at it,
yes,
that you might have gotten jaded of over the years. So
yeah. I have someone that I just brought on my team and I'm just sitting there listening to him, and I'm just like, wow, this is really amazing and helping him feel great. He's 22. He's 22 years old and this guy is sharp. And I'm just like, wow, and it's fun being around him because he's passionate and energized. And that's how I am when I'm on the stage. The rest of the time I'm conserving energy. And he's just letting it out all over the place. And I'm just kind of trying to absorb it and soak it in.
Yeah. Don't we know at all. So
yes. So all right. So this is really powerful stuff here. So let me ask you, based on all your experiences, is what's the best advice you think that you've ever been given?
Don't sweat the small stuff. And in the end, it's all small stuff.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite quote was a Calvin Coolidge is, persistence and determination. I've been discriminated against in my life over my years in personal and professional. I'm sorry, being a woman, I've had plenty of negotiations where they're looking at the man in the room and I'm leading the negotiation. I got to kind of do one of these things, with the men in the room.
Yes.
Yeah. I know it. I don't get offended by it. I just, redirect. The fact that I'm from the Midwest, why would I be doing a Manhattan level type job, as you mentioned at the beginning of the program?
Mm-hmm.
And just staying at it. I mean, it really is. It's not, I often heard that we didn't win the wars and, that we've been involved in. We were just more damn persistent and determined to win the wars. We just, kept going at it. So it's amazing how just the persistence to get something done will further you in your career. So,
yeah. It's really, it's a powerful statement, what you said. And I think our world is just really, really shifting how it's looking at racism and sexism and ageism and all the isms, right, that are going on out there, and having more and more conversations because the internet has allowed everybody to have a voice, right? And really use it now and feel safe and empowered using their voice so that we get rid of those things that are holding us back. And, but you're right.
And
I think that
overall though, Tim, don't you think in your job, having a sense of humor has got to, we all think we're so serious. I went through executive school with a gentleman who was a field commander out in the Middle East for a branch of the United States military. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about how we struggle with decisions and things like that. And he was sitting a few people away from me, and he said to the room, I respect what you guys are all saying, but you're not really making any decisions that are meaningful until you have to send a young man out to battle who may not come back. Mm. And you want to talk about level setting, about what's really important in life. That did it right then and there for me. Wow. And so part of it is that when we get so intense in our jobs and we think it's so important, if you can't bring any fun and levity to the job, why are you doing it? You know, it's the YOLO, you only live once. So, you know, crack that joke, break the tension, distract yourself, come back, have a breath, let's go at it again.
You know, I tried to get my teachers in elementary school to get that, in middle school to get that, in high school to get that, in college to get that. Yeah. I was really trying to live that message, Lynn. And
good for you.
I got a couple swats over it. But I kept at it.
That lesson with horses, by the way, is there's only two emotions allowed with horses. And that's patience and a sense of humor.
Really interesting. Interesting.
Patience and a sense of humor. So
yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's a whole other talk, because that brings up all the horse stories of people that I've known that were training horses and the things that I would see them do and pushing horses around and grabbing them. And I was like, oh my gosh, you poor thing. And he's like, oh no, they could crush me in a second if they wanted to. It's all about who's in charge and helping them know that. And then it actually creates safety. People want to know who's in charge. They want to know what the boundaries are. And yeah, and so it's important to understand that. So laughter is a pattern interrupt. It's a way of, like you said, taking a step back, breathing, getting more resourceful instead of stressed, because when you get stressed, your brain squeezes up and then you're not as creative. Right. And so it's a way of stepping back, regaining your freedom, so you're not emotionally reacting, but you can intellectually choose how you want to respond based on the outcome you're moving towards. And as you start to move in that direction, then you start to collaborate again.
Yes.
And I think the best teams and even the best negotiations are all about what Stephen Covey called synergism, right? Not compromise where you lose and I lose and we settle, but synergize where how can we figure out how we both win higher than we thought we could have, just figuring it out on our own.
Well, let me give you a bit of humor. I got into a very intense negotiation a couple of years ago. And this was a new company I had not worked with. They had not negotiated with me before. And I was the only woman on the team on negotiating, very typical in the area that I work in. Mm-hmm. And this company had sent back the contracts, Tim. And they were marked up from left to right, from Neptune to Tallahassee. And I thought, there is no way, there's no way we can get through these things. And I'm sitting in the room with this company and my colleagues too, who are all male, just to let you know. And I said to my client, I said, you know, you sent back a whole bunch of markups that I'm not going to accept anyhow. I told you if I have a box on that page, I need that box on the page, okay? So you can't just remove the box. We can move left inside the box, we can move right inside the box, but I need that box. I said, but sending back all of these markups, all of these changes that we will never get through in any reasonable time is going to make me, Lynn, one very unhappy woman. And I said, y'all are married, right? You know what an unhappy woman is like. And they looked at me for a blank stare, and then they started rolling in laughter. And they're like, we get it. We understand what an unhappy woman's like. I said, there you go. I said, so let's step back and see how we can, you know, come back in this synergistic way that you just described.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
great. Oh my gosh, that is so funny. So is there anything that you would like our, viewers or listeners to do? Anything you want to focus our attention on as we wrap up our time together?
Well, one of it is you want to talk about, negotiations in high performance teams. Really, I want to emphasize diversity. And
Mm-hmm.
diversity comes in many shapes, flavors, and forms. Diversity of thought. For example, I don't think our Supreme Court is diverse because they all graduate from the same law school for the most part.
Oh,
Okay.
really?
Yeah.
That's
They
interesting.
might be diverse in ethnic backgrounds, they're not diverse in thought. So
Right.
don't forget about that as well.
Good
So
point.
diversity in many shapes, flavors, and forms. Thought, schooling, life experiences, ages, orientation, all those geography based, it's amazing. Just somebody from a different part of the country or the world,
Mm-hmm.
might have a different point of view. So diversity is really key. Honoring the strengths the person brings to the table. Absolutely. Don't make somebody try to be something that they're not. There's nothing the matter with trying to get people to be a little bit more well-rounded. But when you want the high performance team, let the point guard be the point guard. Don't try to turn them into the center. Okay.
Yeah.
As you know, I work for a former college coach, so we're always talking in a lot of athletic.
Sports metaphors.
Exactly, which is fine. So again, the diversity, honoring people for who they are, and having good boundaries and being transparent.
Mm-hmm.
People want to do business with me again because I've treated them fairly before.
Mm-hmm.
And it's as simple as that. So.
Yeah. Very nice. Very nice. Well, Lynn, this has been very entertaining and very educational. And I know we could go on and on. I got to honor your time, even though I want to just keep going. But I know you are in demand. So thank you so much for being a part of our program. And I hope we can have you back again so that we can talk about some other cool stuff in the future. So,
Absolutely.
but yeah, thanks so much for being with us. And I really appreciate you for taking the time today to share all those wonderful thoughts.
Well, Tim, thank you for having me and look forward to meeting with you again.
Yes, absolutely. And for everybody else that's watching and listening, thanks so much. Without you, this wouldn't matter. So thanks for being here, and make sure that you subscribe and share this podcast with your friends and make today a sure success. Thanks, everybody.